Hey, it's Zombie Tactics again today, and today I want to talk a little bit about a subject that's been kind of roaming around in the back of my mind for just a little bit anyway. You know, if you play cards at all, blackjack, poker, and you play with other people, you notice from time to time that there are people who, they're probably experienced players, and they've picked up little tricks or little fidgets or something that they do just to while away the time or just to mix things up and make them a little bit interesting. People will do little bits of manipulation with a chip in their hand. Sometimes they'll shuffle their cards in interesting ways, and that just kind of shows off that, yeah, I've been at this for a while, I know what I'm doing. When it comes right down to it, though, those kinds of tricks don't confer you any advantage in the actual card game, though, itself. The rules of blackjack still apply, and the rules of poker still apply, and you're going to win or lose that game based upon the skill you have playing that game, not whether you can do some little trick with a chip in your hand or shuffle the cards in some interesting way. Well, I've noticed that people who are experienced with firearms often do the same thing, and sometimes this causes confusion with people who are newer to learning to operate firearms, and sometimes people do things out and out that show you that they probably shouldn't be your instructors, because they instruct techniques that are really more mall ninja techniques as opposed to things that are solid, basic firearms handling skills. Well, heck, I'm no different than anybody else. I've been handling firearms myself for a while, and so I've picked up little tricks. And by the way, I'm using, dummy rounds here, snap caps, and I've checked this about 12 times. So one of the things that happens when you're learning to use a firearm is you've got a condition where the slide is locked back, meaning that all the rounds in your magazine are done, and there's a pistol that's not going to operate. I can pull the trigger all day. Nothing's going to happen. So you need to get another magazine in there, right? You drop the magazine, and you're going to slam another one home. Well, standard technique is you go ahead and you slam that magazine home, and then you either operate the slide release, if indeed it's a slide release for your particular model of pistol and not just a slide catch as it is on some models, but sort of the preferred method is to go ahead and just rack the slide home like that. That will load around into the chamber and you're ready to go. Little mall ninja technique there, catching the round as it's coming out. I'm going to reload the magazine real quick. Well, my little mall ninja technique for doing that is, and I can do this with my SR9, I can do this with a Glock, I can do this with a Springfield. It requires slightly different technique for each one, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But if you slam that magazine home in precisely the right way, and notice that my thumb does not go up on the slide at all, boom, I can get that to slide home just by inserting the magazine in a really forceful way, and then boom, I'm ready to fire. There you go. And so I suppose in some ways I could get back into the fight, maybe, didn't catch it that time, maybe tenths of a second fast or whatever. And some people might say, oh, that's an advanced technique, that's super cool, and you ought to teach that as a firearms technique. Not so fast. And the reason for that is that it's not a standard technique. There's a lot of times, depending upon all kinds of circumstances that occur, where I can try that technique and, it didn't work that time. I didn't do it exactly the right way. I've noted that I can do this with my Ruger SR9. I can do it with a Glock 22 or 17. I can do it with anything in the Springfield series. I know people say they can get that behavior with the Smith & Wesson M&Ps as well. But it's not a standard technique, and the reason why it's not a standard technique is it doesn't work every time. I do know, however, that if I get the magazine in there and it's in there firmly and I rack the slide, boom, there's now a round in the chamber and I'm ready to rock. So if I'm training someone else or I'm demonstrating handgun operating skills, I ought to go with the technique that's going to work all the time. That's also why some handgun schools will say, well, don't even teach people to use the slide release method to bring that home, because while that may work on a particular brand of pistol that you have, it doesn't work 100% of the time with all pistols. On some pistols, the manufacturers will tell you, we don't like you doing that. We think it wears out the slide release too much. And on other pistols, the slide release is so tight that you couldn't get that to work at all. So why not, when you're practicing, or if you're training or teaching someone else, teach them the technique that will work every time, which is grasping the slide, pulling it all the way to the rear in an explosive fashion, and then letting it go. That's going to get around in the chamber every single time, and the Ruger's got a little loaded chamber indicator here that shows you that that's happening. Anything else is not necessarily an advanced technique, it's just a technique that might not work under pressure and under the stress of an actual defensive situation where you've got to employ a firearm to protect yourself against zombies or bad guys or whatever else. And again, I'm nobody's boss, I'm nobody's tactical guru. I can just observe, having been shooting handguns for 30 years and having had a lot of training from a lot of different schools and a lot of different instructors, what constitutes good solid technique and what constitutes not such solid technique. So when I see somebody out at the range and they're doing something like this though, they're using that slingshot technique, and instead of handling the weapon in a safe manner, they've got it way out in front here so they can get leverage, and the gun's on its side, gangster style, and they're grabbing it and they're struggling with it and they're all over the range pointing it. And of course I'm exaggerating, but you'd be surprised. People muzzle each other all the time when they're in the middle of racking their thing that way, and boy, this is uncomfortable because there's just not a lot of leverage with it to get that round home. Now, again, if you occasionally slingshot the round, I don't care. It drives me crazy when I see it in movies, and it drives me crazy when I see people doing handgun reviews and they're on a range and there's no reason to use that technique, and it's not the standard technique and it's not the most effective. Why not? Well, because anywhere you are, that works. It doesn't matter whether you have the gun out in front of you, you've got leverage. Okay? It doesn't matter whether the gun is held in close to you, that works. It doesn't matter if you've got the gun behind your back, I'm not going to show you that. It doesn't matter if you've got the gun at the Sewell position, you can do it there. And I'm out of rounds, so the slides are back now, but it works just fine. So tactically, it's a better idea to learn that standard technique as well. If you don't know it, by the way, it's simply, and I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to be real safe about it, it's the palm here, the fingers over the top, and you rack. I'm going to drop the magazine here so that the action will work correctly, and boom, like that. Now the complaint that I will hear over and over from people is like, well, that's hard, I can't get it, and they will sit here and struggle with this, and it's because nobody's ever told them the proper technique. The technique is that you are actually almost sort of like locking the hand here and not even doing a lot of manipulation here. Most of the manipulation is pushing the gun forward, although it kind of looks like you're doing the same. It looks like you're doing this, and ideally you want to go ahead and slam that back on your shoulder like that, so that that's a very explosive movement with a lot of force. But even so, I've had grown men tell me, and they claim to be experienced shooters, well, I can't do that because it's just awkward and I just can't somehow and blah, blah, blah. Well, I've taught a lot of people this technique, and I have yet to find somebody that once they really engaged it and stopped being resistant and decided to go ahead and learn it, that they can't do it. This gives you all kinds of tactical advantages, again, because you can do it in any position that you want. It can be, down here. It can be sideways or at the Sewell. It can be behind your back, frankly, and I'll do that right now. It works in every position. Try to do that with the slingshot technique and it's not going to work. If you're in the middle of an actual gunfight, you don't even have to take the weapon out, or I should say, you don't even have to take the weapon off of your potential bad guy or zombie or whatever. Boom, it's here. When you do this slingshot technique and you got it all over the place, all of a sudden you're not pointing anymore. I've seen people just point it and do that kind of thing. But occasionally people will still say, well, I can't do it. It requires too much strength. So I'm bringing in a special assistant to help me demonstrate this point and drive it home. Okay, so I'm here with the Tactical Mouse, Tac Mouse, and you are how old?
13.
13. And are you reasonably prepared for the zombie apocalypse?
Well, I think I am.
Okay, and does your father know that you'll be handling firearms today?
You are my father.
That would probably cover it then, right? How many handguns do we have on the table here?
5.
You think that's a pretty reasonable cross-section of the handguns out there?
I believe so.
Okay, here we go.
Glock 22. Springfield XD40. Ruger SR9. Ruger SR9C. And my personal favorite, the Ruger LCP.
All right. Now, just as a side note for the safety Sallies, did we safety check these pistols before we did this little demonstration?
Many, many times.
Okay, good. How many times did you check it?
About 3.
Okay, and how many times did I check it?
3.
All right, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that about puts that whole issue of it being too hard or requiring too much strength to bed. As always, I invite your comments and criticisms. That's Zombie Tactics for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.